Everyone, thanks for joining. My name's Jordie Daley. I'm a senior ecology solutions consultant at AI Dash, working on BNGAI. So, a quick bit about me: I studied environmental science, did a couple years of ecology consultancy in Australia, then moved to London and joined AI Dash a bit over 2 years ago. I've spent most of that time running field teams, so BNG surveys, PEA surveys, and live projects for clients using the platform. So I've actually been the one actually in the field with this app, getting rained on, doing the condition criteria and all that great field stuff. More recently, I've moved into a solutions consultant role, which basically means I sit between our ecology clients, our product team. So day to day, I'm working with consultancies, developers to help them get the most out of their platform, whether that's onboarding, figuring out how BNGAI fits in their existing workflows, or running sessions like this one. And then the other side of it is more feeding back into our product team what ecologists actually need in the field. So the tools keep on improving based on real use. So if you got any thoughts on what works or what doesn't, or what you wish existed, that's exactly the sort of thing that I want to hear, and we can build it to get even better. This is the second in our BNGAI in practice series, short focus sessions on different parts of the platform. We're still pretty new to running these, so genuinely, if there's a topic you want us to cover or feedback on the format, we'd love to hear it. My colleague Hannah's also on Q&A duty today, so drop questions in there as we go, and we'll try and cover them at the end. So, the field app. If you're doing surveys for BNG, you know the workflow. Their study, go to site, pen and paper, or whatever your setup is. Then you go back to the office and manually key everything into the metric, build the figures, write the report. A lot of repeated handling of the same data, and a lot of time spent on stuff that isn't actually ecology. What the field app does is collapse that. You go to site with AI generated preliminary habitat maps already loaded onto your phone. You validate or adjust them on the ground, complete your condition assessments right there, and sync everything back to the web platform. Your data flows straight into the reporting and the metric. No rekeying, no clipboard, and I'll show you what that's like. So once you're logged in, you can see the assigned sites. Now I only have the one because it's obviously a demo. They're either split into new, in progress, or completed. Once they go from new to in progress, you can't shift them back, but you can shift them between in progress and completed on the fly whenever. You can also go to the settings, see when you last did a big sync. Help navigates you to a help page, which has sort of FAQs and general guides with how-to videos. Log out or report an issue, and then you see the version number at the bottom. So you can see the bit of an overview from the project. So it's the client, exactly how big it is, and roughly where it is based on where you are and what was assigned, and then how many habitats there are. So I'll pull up this site. It will render it as we see. So it's quite a complex site here. We've got 766 habitats, pretty big, 24 hectares. A bit more of the metadata about it. We can see it as a satellite view, or we can also go as a map view underneath if we prefer. So street view, like Google Maps, the satellite is Mapbox. If you want to look at habitats a bit more specific, you can either go into the habitat tab and scroll through individually. To enhance this further, which will then be displayed on the map as well, you can use the filter icon in the bottom right to filter by type of habitat, so polygon, line work, or point, so trees, and then you can also filter by subhabitat as well. So if you only want to see all the modified grasslands, that's something that you can easily do. Finally, if you're on the site and you're trying to find the last 5 habitats you haven't assessed, you can also filter by completion status. So that easily gets you to where you want to go. You can also adjust the opacity of all the habitats, so probably better shown on the satellite view. If you want to see a bit more about what's underneath the satellite, the habitat itself, you can slide and that'll stay fixed throughout all your screens. Quick note though, the background map is Mapbox, which isn't always perfectly aligned with the shapefiles. The polygons are the spatially accurate layer. So if something looks slightly off against the aerial, trust the polygons as they're 100% georeferenced because they go on imagery. That's what we run the system over. So probably the most important part of the BNG process is the condition assessment. If we want to go to a habitat, let's say we're walking on the site. If I was on site as well, I'd be identified by a little blue cursor icon. But obviously I'm sitting in London right now, so I'm not up in Leeds where this site is. So we'll click the modify grassland habitat, which we have here. You can see it's not started. You can see the 7 condition assessments that need to be done. And you can see that currently our condition estimate of it is poor, just based on the sort of context of where it is. But that by no means we're saying is correct. It needs to be validated, but just sort of helps give a macro sort of estimate about how many habitat units the site could have, a bit of a range for an indicative status. So let's, I realize I've jumped ahead of myself. Once we're at the start, the open survey, we need to start the survey, which will then move the survey into the in progress section. Once it does, it will sync the data, but we can hide that and continue working in the background. So we'll click back on the habitat, hit start condition assessment. Now, this sort of prompts us for the first thing, which I mean, you would immediately go through as you're on site, is you ask, is the classification right? So our system has said that it's a modified grassland, but if you get to site and it's actually another neutral grassland, you could change that here. Or if it's completely different and it's say it's a other broadleaf woodland, you can also change that by changing the broad habitat group. But we'll stick with the other neutral grassland for this exercise. If you open it, it'll pull up the DEFRA condition sheets, which you can pull straight from the Excel. That's on the DEFRA BNG web page. Also, all those habitats we were looking at before are pulled straight from the BNG metric. So it has that easy sort of transition. You can navigate through the condition criteria non-sequentially. So as you're walking through, if you say, oh, I'm actually better to assess criteria D now, you can do that. Again, if you're editing a previously completed habitat and you just want to change the existing one, you can just navigate where however you want. Say we'll start with the first one, 6 to 8 basic plant species per meter present. Say yes, no, and say average of 7 per quadrant. And that'll be saved. Next. If you ever run into a question that you're not entirely sure on, we also have AI Eco Pilot, which sort of helps us or the user in the fields if they don't know anything. Here's one I just ran earlier. It's trained on DEFRA resources, so pretty much think the user guide and the metric. So I just asked before what the difference between a modified grassland and another neutral grassland is. It sort of spat out some information. You get 10 credits per day. So obviously you go through them, but I found that that should be enough unless you're really encountering like quite a novel complex site. So a better one, another one could be for trees is what are the exact size classes? Fortresses would be an interesting answer, but not ideal. You can also use diction throughout the entire app as well, yeah, if you prefer to save your thumbs from typing and just speak instead. It'll then pull out exactly what it says in the user guide, which we'll then comment to later. So we'll exit out. Once you complete all the criteria, you can then upload images. You can upload 5 per habitat, which I think is generally enough. I mean, I like to do a couple shots of the landscape and then maybe a couple of square meter on the ground to sort of show the species that I then record later, which I'll show you. A couple of quadrats, but I find that's generally enough. You save it, hit finish assessment. We'll do a quick sync back up to the platform, showing the interim score of poor. Because I only answered one criteria, it's going to come out as poor anyway, so that's accurate. And then you can see that the condition has been completed, so we see the green tick, but we do see once we go in it that the Q criteria are unanswered and with the little hazard symbol. So if you were in the filter that I showed you before, this would come up as in progress. So you're not going to miss anything that you might have missed out on only one condition or something. Next, I'll show the justification tab, which you can put in a quick description. So say if this is just a fields with benches that will then populate into the report. You can also use generate with AI, which will pull the habitat type and the photos to then sort of give a sentence or two on exactly sort of what is on the site as it can see, and then you can edit from there. Hit submit, that will then get saved. Species lists, we do have a recommended species or typical species, a better way to think about it, which is per habitat type that we see are typically occurring on these habitats. Click that up. It comes with a DAFO scale automatically pre-populated. So we see there is white clover, there is daisy, there is creeping buttercup. We add them. We can then go in and edit the DAFO scale. If there's more than frequent creeping buttercup, add it to abundant. And then we can also just start adding more as well. And it also auto-populates. So say if you saw a lot of perennial rye, it will then come up and we can add dominant more and you keep adding until you have a complete species list there, and then that'll save to that habitat. So that's pretty much the core loop. Every habitat follows a similar pattern, open, confirm, change the type, work through the criteria, species and photos, submit. The trees have extra step for size classes, and rivers you'd attach your RCA sheet separately, which you can do on the platform. Obviously, because it's a different process, it takes a bit more time, but the rhythm is essentially the same. If you want to go a bit more, you can check the criteria out through here and see my answers. And then it also has the footnotes, which are attached to those condition sheets. Now, what if the map isn't quite right? So most of the time I've found it's the classification you're adjusting, and I think the spatial boundaries are quite tight, but occasionally the boundaries do need a bit of tweaking based on what you see on the ground. So we'll take this modified grassland I just used. We'll go back to the project view, and we'll use the bottom right vertical ellipsis to open up the sort of habitat augmenting menu. We'll hit split habitat. We'll zoom back in. We'll click the habitat we want to split. Now you can either split it through a polygon, which all points have to be inside. So if we saw a triangle pond in the middle of this modified grassland, we could put in that and that would eviscerate. But for the sake of this demo, I'll just say it was split in half. Now it does warn you that it can't be undone. It shows you the areas that were being split into, but we can easily undo any sort of mistake we made using the merge functionality. So I'll go to the same menu, hit merge. This will then pull me out, and you have to select contiguous habitats to be able to merge them together. Now, a note on the split is the split conserves all the data that was in the original habitat. So both of these instances would have the species that we just put in, the justification we put in, and I think criteria B, no, criteria A is the one we did. They'll have both. And so when you go to merge, it will then ask you which you want the parent to be, I like to call it as. So the one that will conserve all the data. So on this one, it's a bit of a moot point because we didn't actually make any changes. But if I had changed the modified grass into another neutral, or I'd done a bit more criteria, or added a bit more species, etc., I would then have to decide which one I wanted to be the parent and keep, and then have the other one lose its data, but just sort of absorb its spatial boundaries. It gives you the area to sort of help delineate between the two if it's the same habitat. I'll pick one, it'll merge, that then renders again. So while you can't undo a split, you effectively can. I'll quickly go through the other two features of the habitat augmentation menu. You can create linear habitats. So think watercourses, hedgerows, or urban walls. So green walls, sorry. You can see the existing length that we have in the top left of the site already. And if we then go and create our new lines, you can see that the linear length there is we're creating something that's 90 meters. It'll then pull up the different types. So we'll say there's a hedgerow, species rich associated with a bank or a ditch. That will then pull up and render, as we can see there. Say we made a mistake and actually, I don't know what I was thinking. There's clearly not a hedgerow in this field. We just need to tap on the hedgerow, bottom right corner when you're inside the specific habitat, and delete it. Now that can't be undone, but again, you could roughly recreate it if you made a mistake. And similar process for individual trees in terms of the creation and the deletion. I should note that there is a compass icon in the bottom left, which will always snap to where your location is, whatever the tablet or phone you're using is. So for creating trees, I typically put my back up to the tree, snap the location, and then tap it, get it correct. Add that in, and we would delete it the same way. For polygons, we make deletion a bit trickier because our analysis, our system will always give you complete area within the red line boundary that we get uploaded. So it never should be the case where a user needs to create more habitat. So we do allow it, but it's a bit more between a wall. So these are the tools are there when you need them, but I said most surveys you'll spend 90% of your time in the condition assessment anyway, and then split a couple things. Lastly, before I get into the syncing, target notes. I'll touch on if you see something at site that needs to be recorded at a specific location, a badger set, invasive species, anything you'd want in a PEA or ecological appraisal, or even if you saw something that you just wanted to record on site, like I was on site last year and saw an open manhole cover in the middle of quite high grass, and I thought that was very dangerous. So use the target note functionality, which is a little icon, text box icon in the left. Again, you could use the compass to snap to wherever you are, which is very handy, or you can drag and drop the little icon and then confirm the location. You can then add up to 5 photos for that as well, and then move on to the text. And let's say we saw a badger set in the middle of this urban landscape. That will then get geolocated and tagged to whatever habitat it falls in. So it's identified by this little icon there, and then they show up on the web platform and in the reports. Both you can then see all the target notes on the site. We only have one, or you would go into the exact habitat, and then you can see that has that target note attached to it. So that's the general workflow. Once you've completed the site or even just a section, you can sync. You can also see a bit more information about what is being synced. The remaining items, so there's 4 because we've made up to four changes. A lot of that would be that splitting and merging, which essentially again will be moot, but the system collects all the sort of actions, so we're not missing any of that data. So you could sync here just for per site. Say if you're at land portfolio where you have a lot of many different sites and you're going through, you could then exit the report, exit the site, go into here and then sync, and that would sync everything, all the sites that have changed that are tied to your account. The app works fully offline, so if you're in the middle of nowhere with no signal, everything stays locally. You just sync when you're back in range. And once synced, the data is live on the web platform immediately. Your colleagues can see what you've surveyed, the condition scores, photos, who did it, when, all time-stamped, and all attributed to your individual login. So that's pretty brief overview of the field app. So pull it together. You go to site with the preliminary habitat maps loaded. You validate, adjust, assess condition, capture species, photos, target notes all in one place. Sync it back and the data flows to the platform for reporting, the metric and portfolio oversight. This data then feeds into the wizards that I was speaking about at the start, which we'll cover in a future upcoming sessions. There's also a planning tool for running what if scenarios on habitat interventions, and then Sam covered a portfolio dashboard in the last session on the series. I do acknowledge I probably ran through this quite fast though. There will be, I think, a YouTube recording of this if anyone wants to go back and have a look. But we can go deeper into the utility of the field app if that's desired. So again, let us know. This is an iterative process as we learn how to get the best value to you guys from these sessions. So with that, I'll probably go to questions. Hannah, is there anything in the chat yet?
Yes, thanks, Jordie. Just a reminder, if you do have a question, if you could put that in the Q&A dedicated function of the Zoom as opposed to the chat. I will go to the ones that are in the chat. So we have the first one, which is from John Roberts, which simply says, I'm wanting to use AI to get my photos from my phone formatted into my BNG reports. Currently, this is something that I have to manually do through OneDrive, download them, and then individually copy paste them. Do you have any suggestions on how AI can streamline this?
Thanks, John. I'm not, if it's for within our ecosystem, like the BNGAI app, then you should just be able to add them to the whatever habitat they relate to or the target node, similar to the process I just showed, and then they should pull through to our report. If it's outside, I think you probably got the best, most efficient workflow so far for that, for what I know. Sorry.
Thanks, Geordie. The next one in the chat says, if someone wishes to incorporate a vertical green facade, is there a way to account for its area even though it's not horizontal?
Yes. So I just lost the share screen, so I'll just bring that back. So our green wall functionality does account for that. Gets entered as an area habitat in the metric, but obviously if you're looking at it from a GIS system, which effectively this is a mobile version, you need to represent them as a line work because it's vertical. So we'd hit create linear habitats, and similar to how we made the hedgerow before, I'll just draw a line. We'd have it as urban, which is in there, ground-based green wall, facade-based green wall, which are the two different types supported by BNG. Create the habitat, and then if I enter it, modify grass sense a bit finicky sometimes.
To add to this while Jordie's showing you what our app does, it relates to how the metric wants to see things because part of what our app does obviously is pull through what you've done in the field and put it straight into your metric. So you've got that calculation straight away. And there's certain features that have to be lines. This is one of them. Hedgerows is obviously one of them as well. And also rivers are actually one of them. But the metric, the way in which it has been designed, it inherently accounts for the fact that actually it does know it has an area, but it wants you to put it in as a line. So don't be worried about that. It's kind of basically built into the calculation.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. Yeah, you said it perfectly. So what you can see here, it says it gives us the length. If you go on you can do the condition assessment. Then when you go on the platform later, you can then input the height, which then informs the area that gets transferred into the metric. So that's how we account for the vertical sort of area habitats within BNGAI.
Thank you, Geordie. We've got a couple more. I'll save the nicest one for last, actually. Is there a way of exporting content from the app?
Content, I suppose, is a bit broad. You're able to export. Um, you can get maybe not the app itself from the platform. As I touched on the reporting wizards and the metric that exports, I suppose, the more submission ready data out there to give to the LPA in terms of it in its more raw data form. We do have functionality for exporting to a GIS software, but that is locked sort of behind a more of an enterprise level agreement with BNGAI. And then we can also export, I think, yeah, the condition responses as a CSV. But again, I think that might be more of a proprietary sort of arrangement. But I definitely want, if you're interested in knowing more, definitely just shoot me an email. I'll put it in the chat now, and I can look into it.
That's great. Thank you, Geordie. And then one that I think is one that the kind of things that we like to talk about definitely is what we're doing next. So what are we building next into this app? What can we
Uh,
look forward to?
Next in the app is, which me and Hannah are actually testing this week, is multiple surveyors on the one site. So obviously, I mean, this site's a pretty good example, right? Like I've got the filter on now, but it's got 768 habitats. So obviously, one person going through that would take a while. You can double your efficiency if you have two people. So we have that, and that'll be multiple users. So we found a lot of our clients have requested that when they have big sort of land portfolios and they're sort of doing yearly checks. Our monitoring functionality, obviously, it's that next step of what comes after the baseline and submission is you need to be able to track that BNG over 30 years. So we're working on monitoring as sort of BNG matures and develops. So do we as we find what the industry requires and sort of how you can stack up and see the changes in the real time changes in those biodiversity units. We also, as I touched on before, working on the PEA report wizard, which will sit next to our already completed and available baseline reporting wizard and full report reporting wizard. But we're constantly iterating. So, I mean, that's just off the top of my head, but I'll stay tuned. We do have in BNGAI sort of update notes, I think you can subscribe to if you go to the help section of the web platform, release notes sort of thing.
we will invite you to give us any feedback from the session today. Any questions that you subsequently think of, for example, any other features you want to see, anything that you feel is working well, anything that you feel is maybe not quite working as well on the Field app, that would be great.
Yeah, and anything more you'd want to see in depth of. I didn't brush into you can do assess multiple habitats at once. But so there's a couple of more advanced features like that. So if that's something you'd like a separate session on, just let us know. Thanks everyone for coming. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I appreciate any sort of feedback you can give us.